Hi, thanks for spending time with me again today. I really appreciate you and your family joining me for this presentation on livestock farm animals. Another very good reason to become whole food, plant-based individuals. Have you ever thought about where your animal-based foods come from? I'm talking about your cheeseburgers, your chicken nuggets, ice cream and bacon. Have you ever really examined how it was made? Before we transitioned to a plant-based diet, I never thought about it. I was, to use a great phrase, comfortably unaware. I bought or ordered food and ate it. I only thought about how it was prepared because I cook. But that's about all. Most people prefer not to think about how their food goes from being a living animal to the grocery store or restaurant, then to our plate. It's hard to visualize or think about what happens to a 1,200-pound cow when you're hungry and holding a burger. Kids today have an even harder time of making the connection because many of us live in urbanized areas and don't ever see farm animals. In this session, we're going to go over some terminology. Then we're going to talk about our growing population, kinds of farming, specific farm animals such as chickens, cows, pigs, and even fish, issues of public health and contamination, sustainability, animal welfare, and secrecy or ag-gag laws. For the next half hour or so, we're going to talk about the journey animals take to get to your plate. This entire topic is huge. We're only going to touch upon some essential points so you and your family can get a grip on the basics. I'm going to pop in 2 additional times to recap important points. So now get comfortable with your plant-based snack and get ready to learn more about how that face got on your plate. Oh, have you reviewed the questions for reflection and discussion before we begin? I hope so. Donald Watson started the Vegan Society in 1944 in the United Kingdom with the aim of not using animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. If you click on that link, you can read more about what he had to say. Now, before we officially get started, I want to talk about ethical vegans for just a minute. Studies have indicated that people who maintain a plant-based diet over time eventually incorporate an ethical component that's based either on concern for animal welfare, the environment, or both. For example, I started out being a whole food, plant-based diet advocate for purely health reasons. We didn't want my husband to die of a second heart attack. His father had 1 heart attack, 2 weeks later had a second heart attack, and died. This was a very scary and very real worry. My motivation was purely to keep Howard healthy. As time passed, however, the idea of eating an animal started to bother me. You know, it's legal to eat dogs in 14 countries. We have dogs. Could I eat them? Of course not. In some countries, people eat horses. In some countries, people don't eat pigs, or they don't eat cattle. This whole mashup ideology about who eats what is called carnism. It's all about culture and what we have learned. Just because I grew up eating lamb, do I still have to? Or can I make my own decision? As you go through this presentation, think about your pets. Think about the animals you have known and loved in your life. Think what it means to eat animals and dairy, as well as the larger implications of your choices. Ethical vegans do not believe in exploiting animals and/or degrading the environment, while health vegans are strictly health-oriented. If you're undecided where you fall on the continuum of ethics this particular minute, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you are open to thinking and learning more about other reasons for adopting and maintaining a plant-based diet. What you call yourself right now may not be important either. Take all this information in and think about it. I only ask that you keep an open mind and continue to learn. Label yourself, if you like, when you're ready to make an informed decision. And for all of our sake, I hope you do make the decision to become and remain an ethical vegan. Now let's get on with it. Looking at this graph, you can see that our global population really starts to change in the 1800s. Then, in the 1900s, it starts to explode and just continues. Traditional farms cannot feed this many animal daring-eating people. The numbers of people are just too big. We don't have room on Earth to raise these animals in traditional manner. Okay, so we have about 7 billion people on Earth. The U.S. is only about 5% of the world's population. Yet, we are the number 2 animal-consuming nation. China has over 1 billion people and is now the number 1 animal-eating nation. China is new to eating meat. Traditionally, they didn't. Now, in more urban communities, they're developing the same rates of heart disease and chronic illness of other meat-eating nations. When you read Dr. Campbell's book, The China Study, you'll learn much more about the traditional, healthy, rural Chinese diet. This is my idea of a traditional farm. So pretty, so peaceful, such a fantasy. Huge meat companies have steadily driven down the prices farmers receive for the livestock they raise, forcing farms to get big or get out. Small farms of the past, like this storybook farm, have been replaced by factory farms that pollute nearby air and water, undermine rural economies, and reduce the quality of life for surrounding neighbors. Sure, there's some small farms left, but for the most part, farming has become industrial, and you'll learn lots more about that today. Farm animals are deeply embedded in our culture. It's hard to think about them not living like this when this is what we were taught as children. The reality is that approximately 10 billion animals, not including fish, are raised and killed for food each year for 316 million people. So that's like almost 32 whole large animals per year per man, woman, and child in the United States. There are no federal laws and few state laws governing the conditions in which farmed animals are raised, transported, slaughtered, and processed. The industrial food producing industry has calculated that it's more cost efficient to raise lots of animals and let some die versus raising healthy animals. Mistreatment is part of their corporate equation to make money. For example, 4% of cattle die, 12% of turkeys die, 14% of pigs die, and 28% of chickens die. And that's all okay with them. 99% of farmed animals live in factories. Despite animals' physical pain and mental suffering, the goal of factory farms is to increase quantity, not quality, at all costs. Do you see the chickens located in the upper middle in wire cages? These are called battery cages. They confine egg-laying chickens, 8 to a cage, pooping all over each other. And yes, these are illegal in the European Union. Do you see the chickens in the lower right corner? These are free-range chickens because they don't have cages. Free range is not free on the range and is unnaturally crowded. There are more than 1 billion broiler chickens in the United States, more than 3 birds for every person in the country. The pigs you see here are trapped and cannot move, while these cows are considered milking machines. This doesn't look okay to me, does it to you? This is a map of factory farms in the United States. If you go to the website, listed on the top of the page, you can keep clicking down to your community, just like on Google Maps. The darkest red areas have the most farms, while the palest yellow areas have the least. The blue dots are meat plants. Did you know that nearly half of egg-laying hens' factory farms are located in just 5 states? Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, California, and Pennsylvania. So let's talk about specific animals and start with chickens, the most popular meat to eat in the United States. Chickens have many positive attributes. They're smart as dogs. They're curious. They have a special language. They live to be about 10 years old. They're known to solve math problems. They recognize up to 100 birds by their facial features. And hens are good mothers, and they take care of their chicks, teaching them many things. Dr. Chris Evans at Australia's Macquarie University says, "As a trick at conferences, I sometimes list their attributes without mentioning chickens, and people think I'm talking about monkeys." Chicken consumption has increased 400% in 40 years. People want boneless, skinless chicken breasts and nuggets versus whole hens. This has altered the consumer demand for chicken, so that more chickens are killed than for any other farm animals combined. Because chickens are super crowded, they become deformed because they can't spread their wings. Their breasts are so big they cannot stand up. Factory farms put a lot of stress on animals, so they often exhibit unnatural behaviors, as you might in a crowded, filthy jail cell. Animals peck, kick, chew, and scratch. So the factory farm workers cut off body parts. It is abnormal animal behavior due to the conditions in which they live. Like randomly chopping off a dog's tail, these wounds can leave festering sores and mental anguish. Normally clean, chickens are forced to urinate and defecate on each other. Eggs and chickens are filthy with excrement, which only promotes disease. The killings of chicken is brutal. While conscious, they are stuffed into crates on trucks like cordwood. They're hung upside down, their throats are slit, and tossed into scalding, hot, defeathering tanks of water. Baby boy chicks cannot be used for egg laying, and roosters are not sold for meat, so the babies are dropped alive in grinding machines or large bags to suffocate. These chickens look really bad. A Washington Post newspaper writer visited a chicken shed and said, "The dust, ammonia, and feathers choke the air. The fan turns this into airborne sandpaper, rubbing your skin raw." Another writer from the New Yorker magazine wrote of his visit, "I was almost knocked to the ground by the overpowering smell of feces and ammonia. My eyes burned and so did my lungs. I could not see or breathe. Riders, even workers, are able to leave. Chickens cannot. Their entire life is spent like this, and then humans eat them." Well, think about those eggs, too. In January 2015, a new law went into effect in California. This new law will require egg-producing factories to house hens in larger cages so they can spread their wings. Any eggs sold in California will have to comply with this law as well, so egg producers will have to comply if they want to sell their eggs in California. Egg prices could go up as factories accommodate these small changes. Finally, Salmonella and Campylobacter are the two most commonly found pathogens in slaughterhouses and food processing plants. The Center for Disease Control estimates they cause about 1.2 million illnesses in the U.S. each year. Eggs and chicken are ripe for poisoning due to the chicken's horrible living conditions. About 75 to 85% of chickens are infected. Now that's 350 deaths and $3 billion lost in healthcare costs and lost productivity due to this poisoning and filth. To add injury to insult, documentaries have shown films of workers abusing chickens and turkeys by stomping on them, spray painting their faces, punching and slamming into them, even sexually abusing them. Now these are the very creatures that the professor compared to monkeys because they're so smart. The situation with cattle is not great either. Are you doing okay? This is pretty brutal, isn't it? However, as more and more people are learning about this treatment towards animals, they're interested in vegan, plant-based foods. Just to recap, before we talked about killing millions of chickens, we talked about different cultures and how different cultures eat different animals. Why some people eat dogs in some countries and not pigs in other countries. We talked about how our population is exploding And how will we feed so many people? What will happen when the world's population grows to 9 or 10 billion in 2050? How will our younger generations manage that as adults? The other big idea that we talked about is that there are no federal laws and few state laws governing the conditions in which farm animals are raised, transported, slaughtered, and processed. The industrial food producing industry has calculated that it's more cost efficient to raise lots of animals and let some get sick and die versus raising healthy animals. Mistreatment is part of their corporate equation to make money. Keep that in mind as we continue to talk about cattle, pigs, and fish. Dairy cow mothers cry for days when their babies are taken away, but the cows have to be milked for human consumption. Cows are gentle, sweet, and curious. They're clever and very social. With a wide variety of personalities, they like to play games. They naturally live about 20 years versus the 4 to 5 years they live in a factory when they're slaughtered and processed to make food. You can see on this slide, the cows are locked into a metal frame, being milked inside a dark factory. There is no sunshine or pasture, only a dark factory. Humans also ingest the growth hormones given to stimulate the cow's milk, which many believe leads to humans getting bigger and our kids developing faster too. Dairy cows are impregnated every 10 months, so their milk never stops. Dairy milk has a long history of medical research indicating how unhealthy it is. Factory farm cows are also fed ground-up chickens, pigs, and animals to produce more milk. You may have heard of mad cow disease. Oh yeah, it's real. That's when cows are fed ground-up cow brains, and the humans who eat that cow get really sick. There are documented cases of this crazy, horrible neurological disease in the United States due to unsafe factory farm practices. Cow milk is breast milk for baby calves. These are nursing mothers who are not allowed to nurse their young so humans can eat more cheese. The real purpose of cow's milk is to raise a little baby calf into a large 1,200-pound animal that can live naturally about 20 years. Baby calves, raised for veal, are kept in tiny crates, standing in their own waste. They cannot move, turn around, or lie down. Veal crates are outlawed in the European Union. Beef cattle get less than 20 square feet to live in, so think 4 by 5 feet, versus the 1.5 to 2 acres for a cow-calf pair to live in pasture. Without anesthesia, cattle get dehorned and branded. Male cattle have their testicles ripped off and are castrated. Many die in truck transport due to dehydration or heat exhaustion, due to lack of food or water. Why don't you try an experiment? Get down under your desk or table for a few hours and see how it feels to live in a tiny space. Interesting that cheese consumption is up so much. A lot of cheese is consumed in the United States, 2 times more than liquid milk. Okay, so this was an overview of how cows and cattle are treated. We certainly get the idea that these big, sweet, gentle animals live short, tortured lives for human benefit. Let's move on and learn where the ever-popular bacon comes from. Pigs are perhaps the smartest, cleanest domestic animal known, more so than cats and dogs. They're fun, friendly, and interesting. Pigs don't have sweat glands, so that's why they roll around in the mud, to stay cool. A sign of their cleverness came from experiments in the 1990s. Pigs were trained to move a cursor on a video screen with their snouts and use the cursor to distinguish between scribbles they knew and scribbles they were seeing for the first time. They learned the task as quickly as chimpanzees. Pigs recognize themselves in mirrors and learn from other pigs. They're protective of their young. They naturally live to their teens. Pigs are social. They remember locations well. They remember negative and positive experiences, and they can tell the difference between individual pigs and individual humans. The crate you see above is called a gestation crate. It is outlawed in the European Union. You can see it is all concrete and metal, and there's no room for the mother sow to move. And of course the family is lying in their own waste. Like cows, pigs are castrated without anesthesia, have their ears trimmed, tails lopped off, and tips of their teeth are cut off so they don't hurt the workers or each other because they're so crowded and filthy. Sows go crazy from living inside those tiny crates. They're like 7 by 2 and often compulsively chew the metal bars. Another example of how smart pigs go crazy is that 40 full-grown, 250-pound male hogs often occupy the space the size of a small apartment. They can trample each other to death. Can you picture 40 big guys living in a small apartment without access to daylight, a bathroom, or a way out? This is where bacon comes from, the smartest, cleanest domestic animal. Piglets are taken away within 10 days so the mother sow can be impregnated again. Over 1 million pigs die in unregulated transport to the slaughterhouse each year. After 3 to 4 years, the mother sows are slaughtered versus living naturally into their teens. They are electrically stunned to death, but many don't die, so they're dropped alive into scalding tanks of hot water to loosen their skin and remove their hair. A typical slaughterhouse kills 1,000 pigs per hour, so it cannot be humane or painless. The workers are pressured to move very quickly. And then there's that tremendous filth factor too, blood, guts, and poop, so the risks of disease and contamination are high. Pigs are extremely social, clean, and clever animals, and this is how they're treated. If rates continue, pigs will soon be the #1 most popular animal to eat. We've talked about chickens, cattle, and pig. Now let's finish up our specific animals section with fish, and then prepare to conclude this presentation with an overview of public health issues, animal welfare, and secrecy, or ag-gag laws. Fish do feel pain and suffering. They have smart, unique personalities. They are socially intelligent as they swim and maneuver in large schools. Fish can communicate alarm, delight, and sounds of courtship. Fish are caught for 3 reasons. First, they're the target fish. The most popular types of seafood to eat are shrimp, salmon, canned tuna, and tilapia, which is pictured here in this photo, pollock, catfish, cod, crab, and clams. The second reason fish are caught is to feed other fish who are being farmed. Yes, wild fish are caught to feed other captive fish in fish farms. 47% of the fish humans eat are farmed. This is a completely inefficient use of wild fish. Wild fish plays a crucial role in their own local ecosystem. They're being totally wasted. Due to overfishing and consumer demand, fish are now farmed in enclosures like nets and special ponds. Examples of commonly farmed fish are tilapia, carp, salmon, catfish, and cod. All very popular to eat. Like factory farms of livestock animals, fish farms are known to be completely profit-motivated, just like any other corporation. But surprise! There are problems. Fish can escape the nets or enclosures, which can spread disease and harm the local ecosystem. The species can also mutate when captive diseased fish breed with wild fish. Farms disrupt the local ecosystem with heavy dredging and drilling needed to create the fish farms in the first place. Fish farms in water are just as nasty and filthy as factory farms on land. Farmed fish have higher levels of chemical pollutants, like BCPs, which are known carcinogens, as well as large amounts of antibiotics, which causes humans to be more resistant to life-saving medication. Finally, fish farms cause water pollution, with feces, blood, excess food, cage materials, chemicals, antibiotics, and cleaning agents running off in concentrated amounts into the water. So yes, Fish farms in water are just as nasty and filthy as factory farms on land. Look at this photo. Is this where you want to pick up your dinner? The third reason fish are killed is by accident. Collateral damage, so to speak. By kill means fish are killed while fishing for other target fish. Often more fish are killed by accidental collateral damage than would be allowed if they were being caught as target fish. Dolphins, whales, turtles, baby fish, sharks, birds, and seals are also commonly caught, dragged for miles on long lines, then they die, are maimed, or killed, and thrown away. Ships called trawlers use nets the size of football fields and scoop up tens of thousands of living creatures per load. These nets pick up everything in their path. Fish get their skin rubbed raw by the rocks and debris caught in the nets and suffocate on the decks of the ship. Whatever can be salvaged for food goes to market. What is the future of fish? 14 scientists recently got together and speculate that our fish stocks are almost out and could collapse in a few decades. They speculate that by 2048, 100% of the world's fish stock could be gone. The swordfish and marlin population has decreased 90% with industrial fishing. That's like the last 50 years. And the Pacific bluefin tuna populations have decreased 96% in the same time period. Today, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization states that 80% of the world's fish stock are exploited and/or depleted. Creatures living in the sea are in danger. Their habitat, their living conditions, have become deplorable, just like the chickens, cattle, and pigs in factory farms. Due to these living conditions, filled with pollution, drugs, and disease-promoting elements, our overall food supply now poses public health concerns. Yes, the public's health is at risk because of these massive industrial food producers, both on land and in water. To back up a bit, Sir Alexander Fleming was knighted in 1944 and was given the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1945 for his extraordinary achievements which revolutionized medicine. Antibiotics were considered truly miraculous only 70 years ago. Before antibiotics, people died of simple infections. Today, 70% of all antibiotics sold in the U.S. are used in the industrial food industry to prevent infections in healthy animals, the very same animals which humans then eat. 30 million pounds of antibiotics are purchased each year for animals, 4 times greater than used to treat humans for infections and disease. Milk, meat, and fish are often contaminated with antibiotics, which leads to our antibiotic resistance. The Center for Disease Control estimates that 2 million people in the U.S. are infected and 23,000 people die from antibiotic-resistant infections each year. That number is only growing. Sadly, the formerly miraculous antibiotics are now becoming useless due to their extravagant use in factory farming. How will you feel the next time your child, a parent, or a loved one is ill and is unresponsive to the pills? Oh, that is just so scary. I hope you never have to experience that. There is no way to tell by looking if an animal is infected. The federal inspection rules are slowly changing, but still very controversial. Right now, the latest ruling is to have fewer inspectors, but they say they will do more in-depth analysis and testing of the animals. And companies can decide if they want to opt in or not. Well, gee, that kind of sounds like the fox guarding the hen house to me. Okay, I'm not going to go over all the torture imposed upon specific animals. Let's just say that animals raised for food have horrible lives and experience horrible death. It's all very unnatural and short-lived. Sometimes when it's tempting to eat dairy-based ice cream, cheese pizza, or something like that, I picture a cow's face, and that helps me change my mind. Faces are often behind our food choices. We also talked about antibiotic resistance, which poses a real danger to us. Antibiotic resistance is not something to fool around with. It's truly a life or death concern. Coming up next, we're going to talk more about sustainability. Keep in mind, we simply don't have the land for grass-fed, well-kept farm animals. We also talk more about this in the environment session. Then there's the ethics of feeding animals and not people. This is an idea each of you will need to wrestle with on your own. We close out this session with a brief conversation about ag-gag laws, which aim to keep animal agriculture practices secret. There are animal welfare organizations you can get involved with, and you can stop eating animals to save their lives. After the session, please spend some time on the questions for reflection and discussion as you continue your journey towards maintaining a healthy, plant-based lifestyle. Just always remember that a plant-based diet is life-affirming both for us and animals. As a nation, if people are to continue to eat meat, we need to rethink farm and slaughterhouse worker rules about efficiency. Let's shift our attention for one moment to the workers. Do you think the owners care about their workers based on what you see how they care about their animals? I doubt it. Right now, factory farms and slaughterhouses are a pretty unregulated industry. Yet their work poses serious public health concerns. As Professors Gerson and Sachs at Harvard Law School argue, workers cannot be worn out or work too fast because people's health depends on it. Things like line speed, paid break time, union organizing protections, vacations, and training are essential if we have these massive factory farms. This is a very important topic to follow up on. So leaving that 99% behind, there is still that 1% of special elite meat. The word sustainable is very popular right now. Sustainability is vitally important because we need to remember in all that we do that we have over 7 billion people on this planet and limited resources. This is a fictionalized, tongue-in-cheek account of Fred. My name is Fred. I grew up on a really pretty farm, ate organic grass, was petted every day, and listened to music in my barn. I was shampooed and even one year wore a special bow during the holidays. I got to roam on at least 2 acres of land designated just for me. I had a great life, until I didn't. About 99% of animals raised for food are part of the industrial food industry. Very few get to live like our fictional Fred here. However, these 1% of animals are still bred, separated from their families, and killed for humans to eat. Animals like this are at the very top of the food chain. Just think of all the resources they consume. The 1% of elite meat animals are healthier and happier, no doubt about it. Interesting that their owners, the farmers, do not receive any federal subsidies for grass-fed cattle. The 1% of grass-fed livestock, like Fred, may be treated a bit better, but it's still completely unsustainable if we think about feeding 7 billion people. We simply don't have the land, water, or resources to grass-feed on pasture all the livestock we eat. I know this sounds crazy, but for people to eat meat and dairy, we need factory farms. Seriously, we do, because our population is so big. Currently, the federal government subsidizes these factory farms, and then those corporate owners pay off lawmakers to keep things the way they want it. The industry is very powerful and wants to keep it that way. If we humans are to continue to eat animal products, we need to either have massive amounts of land, which we just do not have, or we need regulated, clean factory farms, because as we know, factory farms encourage human health concerns for workers and neighbors, animal welfare concerns, and of course, environmental degradation, which affects us all. About 20% or 15 million children in America are food insecure. That means they don't have enough to eat. These children and their families could be eating the same grains and foodstuff that factory-farmed livestock consume. Think about it. On one hand, we're feeding cows a massive amount of food for a couple of years, and then we slaughter them for meat. On the other hand, we have hungry American children and their families who could eat those very same grains and foodstuffs. To me, that is a moral and ethical issue. Should cows eat better than children? I choose to side with the children and leave the animals alone. Just think about it. As we conclude, let's talk about who is working to leave the animals alone and who is not. 96% of Americans believe that animals deserve legal protection. The massive meat, dairy, and egg industries give millions of dollars every year to politicians to prevent the enactment of laws that would protect farmed animals. Okay, so we know that approximately 10 billion animals, not including fish, are raised and killed annually in the U.S. for food. Yet there are no federal laws and few state laws governing the conditions in which farmed animals are raised, treated, transported, slaughtered, and processed. People know what is right. Hurting innocent animals, like what these profit-oriented corporations do, is simply wrong. These corporations don't care about people or animals. These corporations are designed to continually make a profit, which is all they care about. This is all about making more money. The animal agriculture industry is enormously powerful. They spend a ton of money to keep their polluting, cruel industry a secret by paying lawmakers to have secrecy laws to stop us from learning about this industry. These are called ag-gag laws. The corporate food industry wants to restrict concerned citizens, journalists, and whistleblowers from reporting factory farm practices. Laws have been passed to criminalize audio-video recordings at slaughterhouses and factory farms. If you pop over to your local slaughterhouse with a camcorder, you could be arrested. Corporate factory farm owners want to keep their work private. They know it's awful, and they want to hide what they do to animals and their workers. But don't people have the right to know where their food comes from? There are many ways to act upon all this information. You can stop eating animals and dairy. You can become involved with one of the many animal welfare organizations listed on the next slide. You can personally lobby your elected officials, and you can educate your friends, family, and neighbors. The most immediate thing you can do is to stop eating animal products right now. This list outlines a few animal welfare organizations. If this issue moves you, you can follow up. Each of these organizations has an online presence. There are many organizations that are working to stop animal abuse. Look them up. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram. Get involved with them at the local level. What are they doing in your state or community? Find out who they follow on social media and learn more so you can be part of the solution and not the problem. Remember, the simplest, quickest thing you can do to reduce this horrible treatment of innocent animals is to stop eating meat and dairy today. There are some factory farm videos that have been posted online. Some have been taken at great risk to the filmmakers, and the videos are just horrible. I can't watch them. It's just too upsetting. If you plan to watch them, please double check and see who is in the room with you. These videos are not appropriate for young children. And please remember that animals depend on us to help them. They cannot help themselves. In conclusion, our global population is increasing, as is the number of people who are food insecure. 10 billion intelligent animals are tortured and slaughtered in the U.S. every year. Farm animals and fish live in filthy factories, are full of drugs and chemicals. These factories generate massive amounts of pollution. Ag-gag laws have been enacted by rich corporations to keep factory farm practices a secret because they're so awful. You have power. If you choose to, you can do something. I hope you do. Thank you.